Life repeats in small ways. The same morning routine, the same notifications, the same conversations, the same triggers. You plan to handle today differently, but a single message lands, a delay happens, someone cuts in line, and your body moves before your mind catches up. Fingers type faster, jaw tightens, eyes lock in, thoughts accelerate. Then there's a split-second gap. The instant you notice what's happening inside you while everything outside stays the same. In that gap, you can do what you always do, or you can stop. No reply. No push. No defense. Just a pause long enough for everything to change direction. Have you ever noticed how life seems to move in cycles? Sometimes smooth, sometimes chaotic, yet no matter how hard you try, some patterns just keep repeating? You wake up with a sense of hope, set intentions, maybe even take action, and yet by the end of the day you find yourself reacting in the same old ways. Anger flares, anxiety creeps in, frustration surfaces, or old fears resurface. And in those moments, something subtle but profound is happening. A moment that most people never recognize. It is in that very instant, when you realize that your reality is being dictated not by circumstance, but by your reaction to it. That is the moment where the invisible shift can occur. Most of us have been taught, implicitly or explicitly, that to change our lives we must act, we must force, we must do more. And while action has its place, there is a deeper, quieter principle at play, one that often goes unnoticed because it cannot be measured, cannot be checked off a to-do list, cannot be advertised. This principle is simple yet revolutionary. You shift realities the moment you stop reacting. It is not about controlling external events, about manifesting faster, or about bending the world to your will. It is about stepping out of the cycle of reaction, stepping into the observer space, and allowing reality itself to reorganize around a new version of you. Think about the last time you felt hurt, insulted, or triggered. Your immediate instinct was to respond. Sometimes with words, sometimes with thoughts, sometimes with an inner storm that no one could see. That reaction, as small or as justified as it might feel, is a form of energy. It is energy that communicates to the universe, I am here. I am defined by this moment. This is my reality. And while it may feel like you are asserting control, in truth, you are anchoring yourself deeper into the same patterns, the same story, the same reality that you long to escape. Reaction is subtle. It is not only the explosive moments that define it, though they are easier to notice. Reaction is in the irritation that arises when things don't go your way, the silent resentment that lingers after a conversation, the worry that keeps you tossing and turning at night. Every flicker of response, every mental tug toward what you should feel or must do, is a thread binding you to the old timeline. And yet, most of us live almost entirely within this space, believing that life changes when circumstances change, not realizing that circumstances are merely reflections of the inner state that is already reacting. When you pause for a moment and imagine your life without reaction, it may feel foreign, almost impossible. How could you not respond when someone hurts you, when opportunity seems to slip away, when fear knocks at your door? But here lies the hidden truth. In those very moments of pause, when the habitual response is suspended, a new reality begins to emerge. Not immediately, not as a magical instant, but in a subtle unfolding that is far more powerful than any reaction could ever be. The shift begins in your inner world first, and only then does it ripple outward to the reality you perceive. Consider your old self, the version of you that reacts, that flares, that rushes, that struggles to hold on to control. That self is conditioned by past experiences, by stories you tell yourself, by fears both conscious and unconscious. It believes that life is something to be negotiated with, fought against, managed. And it is exhausting because it is always in motion, always responding to the stimuli of the world. Every insult, every delay, every unexpected turn is met with resistance. And in that resistance, the old self remains firmly rooted, recreating the same outcomes over and over, no matter how many affirmations you repeat, no matter how many vision boards you make, no matter how many meditations you perform. Now imagine a different version of you. A self who recognizes the triggers, the frustrations, the urgencies, but instead of reacting, observes. Who allows the moment to exist without judgment, without internal debate, without the need to fix it. This is not apathy, this is profound presence. In that presence, there is no anchoring of identity to the moment. There is no feeding the old patterns with emotional or mental energy. Instead, there is a quiet space, a fertile void where new possibilities can take root. The universe always responds to energy, and the energy of non-reaction is a signal that a shift is possible. A shift that does not come from effort, but from alignment, from stillness, from a subtle but unstoppable transformation of consciousness. You may wonder, How do you even recognize this moment of non-reaction? How do you know when the shift is occurring? It is often felt, not analyzed. It may come as a gentle relief in the midst of chaos, a sudden clarity where confusion once reigned, a quiet knowing that life does not need to be forced. You notice that your internal turbulence has softened, that the compulsive need to control has loosened, and that a sense of possibility, different from hope, different from expectation, has begun to emerge. This is the invisible threshold where reality begins to respond to you differently, where the old patterns no longer hold sway simply because you are no longer feeding them with reaction. And here is the paradox. The very thing most of us resist, the silence, the pause, the surrender, is what holds the power to transform everything. Reaction feels like power because it gives you the illusion of agency, the illusion that you are influencing outcomes. But true power is quiet, patient, and observant. It does not argue with life. It does not demand or resist. It simply exists as the witness, allowing reality to unfold in a way that is no longer dictated by old fears, old stories, or conditioned impulses. The moment you stop reacting, you become the space in which reality can reorganize. You become the still point around which all possibilities converge. The fascinating part is that this shift is not about perfection. You will still feel, you will still be tempted to respond, you will still have moments of old habits. That is part of being human. But awareness itself changes everything. Even recognizing a reaction as it begins to arise is enough to start loosening the chains of the old reality. Every time you pause, every time you choose presence over reaction, you are not just practicing a technique, you are quietly reprogramming your identity, your energy, and the very fabric of your reality. And so, this journey begins not with effort, not with lists or rules, but with an invitation. To watch yourself, to notice the impulses, to allow life to exist without immediate response, to trust that in your stillness, a new reality is already taking shape. It begins in ordinary moments. An email that frustrates you, a conversation that challenges you, a delay that tests your patience. These are not obstacles. They are signals, opportunities to step out of the habitual cycles and into the quantum field of possibility. Each pause, each moment of non-reaction, is a seed of transformation, invisible to the eye but profound in its consequences. As we explore this further, you will begin to understand why the universe responds not to effort alone, but to the energy you embody. You will see how old timelines are maintained by reaction and how new ones emerge when you step into presence. You will discover that reality is not something to chase or force, but something to align with, something to allow. And in that understanding, you will start to feel a subtle but undeniable shift, the kind that cannot be rushed, cannot be controlled, and yet cannot be denied. The invitation is simple yet radical: stop reacting. Pause. Observe. Allow. In this space, your reality is no longer a mirror of old fears, old judgments, old compulsions. It becomes a reflection of your aligned self, your expanded awareness, your inner authority. And the more you practice this, the more you realize that you have been shifting reality all along. The moment you chose to stop reacting, the moment you chose presence over impulse, the moment you chose consciousness over chaos. Reality has always been responsive. It is always waiting for you to step into the space where reaction no longer rules. And when you do, even quietly, even subtly, you will notice something extraordinary. Life itself seems to breathe differently around you. Possibilities appear that were previously hidden. Opportunities arise with ease. Relationships transform. Challenges no longer overwhelm but guide. In the silence of non-reaction, you discover that you have never been powerless, you have only been responding in ways that kept you tethered to the old self. This is the journey we are about to take together. From reaction to presence, from old timelines to new, from the familiar chaos of conditioned response to the quiet power of conscious reality shifting. It begins in awareness, it deepens in practice, and it unfolds naturally, effortlessly, beautifully. Most people think that reality is something that happens to them. They believe that circumstances, other people, and the events of the world define their life. And yet, if you pay close attention, you begin to notice a different truth. Reality is far less about what occurs outside and far more about what occurs inside. Every thought, every emotion, every subtle reaction you have is a brushstroke on the canvas of your experience. When you react, even in ways that feel justified or inevitable, you are unknowingly reinforcing patterns, shaping not only your perception but the very architecture of your reality. To understand this, it helps to look at reaction not merely as a behavior but as an energy. When someone cuts you off in traffic, when a colleague criticizes you, or when life throws unexpected challenges, your instinct is to respond. You might feel irritation, judgment, defensiveness, or fear. That response may seem small, fleeting, even harmless, but it carries weight. It is a signal sent into the universe, a vibration that tells the world, this is who I am. This is how I exist in the world. And because the universe is always reflecting back the energy you emit, this cycle of reaction creates a feedback loop, drawing experiences that mirror the vibration of your responses. This is why people often feel stuck. They have big dreams, spiritual aspirations, or visions of a better life, yet their reality seems stubbornly resistant. They work harder, visualize more intensely, repeat affirmations, or seek external guidance, but nothing shifts. Why? Because their energy is still anchored in reaction. The very thing they hope to escape, the frustration, the fear, the old identity, is continually reinforced every time they react. Reaction keeps the old self alive, and as long as the old self dominates, the old reality persists. Consider this through the lens of contrast. Your old self reacts automatically to triggers. It is conditioned by past experiences, by patterns formed in childhood, by social conditioning, and by every small disappointment and success that has shaped identity over the years. This reactive self is familiar. It is comfortable because it has been around for a long time. But comfort is deceptive. It feels like security, yet it is the very thing that keeps you tethered to outcomes you no longer desire. Every reaction is a chain linking you to the past, a string that holds the old reality in place. Now imagine a different perspective. Imagine observing your impulses without immediately acting on them. Imagine seeing irritation arise when someone interrupts you, noticing the slight surge of fear when uncertainty appears, feeling the tug of expectation in a relationship, and yet doing nothing in response. No words, no actions, no internal storm. In that stillness, something remarkable happens. The energy that usually fuels repetition, that normally recreates the same outcomes, is released. The old self is no longer fed. The habitual cycles lose momentum. And in that pause, a new timeline becomes possible, a new reality begins to emerge. Not because you forced it, but because you stopped perpetuating the old one. This is why understanding reaction is so crucial. Many spiritual seekers focus on manifestation techniques, on visualizing the life they want, on affirming abundance or love or success. All of these practices have value, but if they are layered on top of a foundation of reaction, they are limited. Reaction operates like a hidden current, constantly pulling you back into old waters. No matter how vividly you visualize or how persistently you affirm, the current of reaction carries you to familiar shores. Until you address reaction itself, nothing outside of you can fully shift. Let's examine the way this plays out in daily life. Picture a common scenario. Someone criticizes you at work. The immediate reaction could be defensiveness or self-doubt. Perhaps you replay the moment in your mind, analyzing it, worrying it will happen again. This is a small reaction, but it has consequences. It strengthens your identification with fear, insecurity, and resistance. It sends a subtle but powerful signal. This is my reality. I am defined by this moment. The universe reflects this vibration back, often in ways that reinforce your old pattern. Opportunities for growth or collaboration may appear blocked, interactions may feel tense, and the same fears may resurface again and again. Now contrast this with a different approach. The same criticism arises, but this time you notice the impulse to react. You feel the defense, the frustration, the self-judgment, but you do not act. You observe it, allow it to exist, and let it pass. In that space of non-reaction, you are no longer defined by the external circumstance. You have chosen not to feed the pattern. The energy that would have reinforced the old reality is released. And subtly, without fanfare, a new possibility opens. Perhaps you respond later with clarity, perhaps the tension dissolves on its own, or perhaps the situation transforms in ways you cannot yet predict. The key difference is the absence of reaction. The old reality loses its grip because it is no longer being fed. This principle applies not only to interpersonal situations but to internal struggles as well. Consider worry, overthinking, and rumination. When you react mentally to uncertainty, planning, fearing, replaying scenarios, you are feeding the old reality. You are asserting that the circumstances control you, that you are at the mercy of outcome, that fear has authority. But if you pause, notice the thought patterns, and refrain from reacting, you begin to reclaim your authority. You step out of the habitual loops and into a space of conscious choice. In that space, the future is no longer dictated by the past. The old identity has less power to shape outcomes. A new reality is quietly, invisibly forming. Another important element is emotional reaction. Humans are wired to respond to stimuli, to protect themselves, to seek reward and avoid pain. Yet, much of our emotional energy is spent reacting to imagined or anticipated scenarios rather than actual events. Anxiety about the future, regret over the past, jealousy in relationships, or resentment toward others. All these reactions anchor identity to stories that no longer serve. Every time you engage with these stories, even internally, you are recreating the old reality. And yet, by cultivating awareness and choosing non-reaction, you shift your energy from one of scarcity and limitation to one of presence and alignment. The universe always responds to energy first. The outer circumstances simply follow. The contrast between the reactive self and the aligned self becomes clearer as you practice observation. The reactive self is noisy, urgent, and defined by attachment. It seeks validation, fears loss, and struggles to maintain control. The aligned self is quiet, patient, and aware. It observes impulses without needing to act, feels emotions without being consumed, and trusts in the intelligence of the unfolding moment. This does not mean you are passive or disconnected from life. On the contrary, non-reaction requires more presence and awareness than reaction ever did. It demands that you hold consciousness above habit, that you see reality clearly without coloring it with automatic responses. And in doing so, you open the door to a reality that is no longer dictated by fear or old identity. Perhaps the most remarkable thing about this principle is how universally it applies. From minor irritations to major life challenges, from relationships to career to personal growth, reaction is the invisible lever that determines whether you remain trapped or shift. It is subtle, often overlooked, yet profoundly powerful. Once you recognize it, you begin to see patterns everywhere. The same triggers repeating, the same disappointments resurfacing, the same old narratives playing on loop. And when you learn to pause before reacting, even for a fraction of a second, you begin to interrupt the cycle. That fraction of awareness is enough to create a crack in the old reality, and through that crack, a new possibility emerges. As we continue, you will see that stopping reaction is not a withdrawal from life. It is an invitation to step fully into it. It is not about suppressing emotion or avoiding responsibility. It is about understanding the mechanics of your own energy, reclaiming your authority, and aligning with the version of yourself that is capable of creating a different, more empowered reality. You will learn that by observing your impulses, noticing your triggers, and choosing presence over reaction, you gradually reshape the very structure of your life. The old reality loses power simply because it is no longer fed, and the new reality, subtle but unstoppable, begins to take shape. Every moment offers this opportunity. Every interaction, every thought, every sensation is a chance to step out of reaction and into alignment. And while it may seem small at first, these choices accumulate. Each pause, each observation, each conscious breath is a step away from the patterns that have held you back and a step toward the life that you have always imagined, but could not reach while anchored in reaction. The key takeaway is simple yet profound. Reaction keeps you trapped, but awareness frees you. Reaction anchors you to old timelines, old stories, old fears. Awareness allows the old to release and the new to emerge. By recognizing the invisible chains of reaction and choosing to step beyond them, you reclaim your power, reshape your energy, and open the door to a reality that is not imposed upon you but co-created through your conscious presence. This is the moment where understanding deepens into transformation. Once you begin to see reaction for what it truly is, not a necessary part of life but a pattern that can be observed and released, you step into the threshold of the shift. The next step, the natural progression, is learning what happens when reaction stops and how the universe responds when you inhabit that space fully. It is here, in the quiet observation of self, that the magic begins. The moment you stop reacting, something profound begins to happen. Not immediately in ways you can always measure, but invisibly, beneath the surface of your consciousness. It is as if reality itself pauses, waiting for you to catch up, waiting for your energy to align with the possibility that has always existed but was hidden behind the veil of reaction. You might not notice dramatic changes at first. There may be no sudden miracle, no flashing sign, no instant resolution of every problem. What you will notice is subtler. A sense of ease, a quiet confidence, a feeling that life has slowed down just enough for you to step into your power. This is the quantum shift at work. Quantum physics teaches us that the act of observation affects the outcome. In the same way, in our lives, the act of conscious observation, choosing to witness rather than react, reshapes our reality. When you react, your attention is bound to the momentum of old patterns, and energy continues to reinforce the familiar timelines. But when you pause, when you allow the experience to exist without interference, you step into the role of observer. You are no longer caught in the feedback loop of cause and effect dictated by the reactive mind. In this space, the energy field of your reality becomes fluid, neutral, and open to new configurations. It is here that the quantum shift begins, quietly but irreversibly. To understand this better, imagine your life as a series of paths through a forest. The reactive self walks the same path over and over, worn deep by habit. Every reaction you have, every judgment, every irritation, every worry, presses the path further into the ground. The forest may be dense and full of possibilities, but the worn path is all you know. You may try to step off the path to carve a new trail with force, but the energy of your reaction continually pulls you back, retracing the familiar route. Non-reaction, however, is like stepping off the path entirely, standing in the open clearing, noticing the possibilities all around. You are no longer bound by the grooves of past choices. You can feel the energy of potential in every direction. This is the essence of the quantum shift, the collapse of old pathways and the emergence of new ones. The quantum shift is not about doing more, it is about allowing. It is not about controlling outcomes, but about aligning your inner state with the reality you wish to experience. When you stop reacting, you release the energy that has been holding you hostage. That release is not a passive act. It is an active reorganization of your consciousness. Your nervous system, previously triggered by every perceived threat or discomfort, begins to relax. Your emotional body, previously caught in cycles of fear or desire, finds equilibrium. And your mind, previously racing with endless narratives, begins to observe without attachment. In this state, you are not trying to manifest. You are simply existing as the conscious observer, and in that existence reality responds. There is a subtle but powerful distinction here. When you react, you are negotiating with life. You are trying to control outcomes from a place of lack, fear, or attachment. But when you do not react, you are aligning with life. You are no longer saying, "This is not what I want, I must push against it." Instead, you are saying, "I am here, aware and open. I am present in this moment, and I allow reality to unfold in harmony with my consciousness." The universe always responds to this alignment. Energy flows where attention goes, and attention free from reaction has the power to shape outcomes in ways that action alone cannot. This shift is often accompanied by a sense of expansion, a feeling that the boundaries of self are dissolving. When you stop reacting, you are no longer confined by the habitual stories of your identity. You no longer have to prove yourself, defend yourself, or struggle against life. In that spaciousness, you begin to feel your connection to something larger than the personal self, a consciousness that observes, integrates, and allows. This is the moment where true manifestation begins, not the manifestation of desires as objects, but the manifestation of alignment, presence, and an inner reality that precedes and informs outer reality. One of the most profound aspects of the quantum shift is how it subtly changes your perception of time and possibility. When reaction dominates, time feels linear, urgent, and constrained. Every moment is a trigger, every event a crisis, every delay a problem. But when you step out of reaction, time expands. Moments are no longer measured by struggle or resistance. They are measured by awareness and presence. Possibilities multiply because the energy that previously reinforced limitation is no longer active. A choice arises not from need or fear, but from clarity and insight. You begin to see paths and opportunities that were invisible when you were caught in reactive patterns. The reality that emerges in this space is not forced. It is fluid, abundant, and aligned with your inner state. It is also important to understand that this shift does not require perfection. You will still feel impulses to react. You will still encounter situations that challenge you. The difference is that awareness interrupts the cycle. Each time you notice a reaction beginning, even if only for a fleeting moment, you create a crack in the old reality. That crack is enough for a new possibility to seep through. Over time, these small interruptions accumulate. The nervous system learns a new rhythm. The mind learns a new pattern. The emotional body learns to flow rather than resist. And gradually, almost imperceptibly, your outer reality begins to reflect the inner transformation. Another remarkable feature of the quantum shift is its ripple effect. When your energy changes, it influences not only your perception but the interactions and outcomes around you. People respond differently to your presence. Opportunities arise that were previously blocked. Circumstances that seemed rigid begin to bend in unexpected ways. The universe, responsive to energy rather than insistence, begins to move with a subtle intelligence, orchestrating experiences in alignment with your state of consciousness. It is not manipulation, not control, not force. It is harmony. You are no longer struggling against the current. You are flowing with it. This is why mastery over reaction is considered one of the highest spiritual practices. It is not about suppressing emotion or avoiding life. It is about reclaiming authority over your energy. By observing, pausing, and allowing, you create a space in which the quantum field, the infinite possibilities, can reorganize. In that space, the future is not predetermined by the past. It is co-created moment by moment, guided by awareness rather than habit. And the beauty of it is that this shift works silently, without fanfare, without the need for constant effort. It simply unfolds naturally when reaction is suspended. You may wonder how long this takes or whether it works in every area of life. The answer is that the shift begins immediately, but the effects accumulate over time. Every instance of non-reaction strengthens the new pathways, reshapes your energy, and expands your capacity to perceive and co-create a reality beyond old limitations. It works in relationships, work, health, abundance, and personal growth because all reality is interconnected with your energy. The quantum shift does not discriminate, it responds to the consciousness that allows it. The final element of this shift is trust. Stopping reaction requires letting go of the illusion of control. It requires trusting that life, consciousness, and the universe respond to your energy in ways that are both subtle and profound. Trust does not mean passivity, it means presence. It means knowing that the moment you release reaction, you create the conditions for transformation. It means understanding that life is not happening to you, but with you, in alignment with the state of your consciousness. And in this trust, the quantum shift completes its work. The old reality dissolves, the new reality begins to take shape, and you discover that true power lies not in reaction, but in observation, presence, and alignment.